Welcome to today's show. Today I'm going to be breaking down the top 5 players at each position. We'll be covering secondary, we'll be covering linebackers, defensive line, offensive line, tight ends, wide receivers, halfbacks, and quarterbacks. We'll be covering the top 5 players of those positions. And to start us out, let's do secondary. So the top 5 secondary players coming out of this 2019 NFL Draft, starting at number 1. The secondary is safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, coming out of Florida. And the teams I would predict to draft this player are the Bears, Buccaneers, and Cowboys. I do think he lands with the Cowboys, probably in the first round. Number 2 in the secondary is cornerback Byron Murphy out of Washington. The teams I predict are going to go after this guy are the Buccaneers, Colts, and Raiders. I predict that the Buccaneers are going to draft this player. Number 3 on this list is safety Jonathan Abram out of Mississippi State. I predict that the Bears, Buccaneers, and Cowboys are going to go after this guy. I predict that the Buccaneers are also likely to draft this player. It's going to come down to either Byron Murphy or Jonathan Abram in the first round for these guys. Number 4 on this list is cornerback Jawan Williams out of Vanderbilt. I predict that the Colts, Raiders, and Seahawks are going to go after this guy, and I predict the Seahawks are the most likely team to draft this player. Number 5 on this list is Taylor Rapp out of Washington. I predict that the Cardinals, Chiefs, and Cowboys are the most likely teams to go after this player, and I predict that he does go to the Chiefs. With linebackers, we have number 1, Ben Bierkirven out of Washington, and I predict that the 49ers, Giants, and Titans are going to go after this guy. I predict that he's going to go to the Giants. Linebacker Joe Dineen Jr., number 2, out of Kansas. I predict that the Giants, Patriots, and Saints are going to go after this guy. I predict that he goes to the Patriots. Linebacker Devin White out of LSU. I predict that the Colts, Eagles, and Giants are going to go after this guy. I do predict that he goes to the Eagles. Devin Bush, number 4, out of Michigan. I predict that the Broncos, Eagles, and Giants are going to go after this guy. I predict that he does get drafted by the Broncos. And number 5 is Jelani Tavi out of Hawaii. I predict that this guy is going to go to the Bengals, but the teams most likely to go after him in any case is the Bengals, Chiefs, and Jets. Alright, so defensive line, we have number 1 with Jalen Ferguson out of Louisiana Tech. Predict that the Jaguars, Patriots, Seahawks are going to go after this guy. Predict that he is likely to go to the Seahawks. Number 2 on this list is Josh Allen out of Kentucky. Predict that the Dolphins, Raiders, and Seahawks are the most likely teams to go after this player. Predict that he goes to the Dolphins. Number 3 is defensive tackle Quinnen Williams out of Alabama. Predict that the Chiefs, Jets, and Texans are the most likely teams to go after this player. Predict that he does go to the Jets. Number 4 on this list is Nick Bosa out of Ohio State. I predict that the Cardinals, Dolphins, and Raiders are the most likely teams to draft this player. I do predict that he goes to the Raiders. Number 5 on this list is Montez Sweat out of Mississippi State. I predict that the Giants, Jaguars, and Seahawks are the most likely teams to draft this player. I think he goes to the Giants. On the offensive line side of the football, we have number 1, Jawan Taylor out of Florida. I predict that the Browns, Giants, and Jaguars are the most likely teams to go after his player. I believe that the Jaguars are the most likely team to draft him. Number 2 is Jonah Williams, guard out of Alabama. I predict that the Buccaneers, Dolphins, Rams are the most likely teams to grab him. I think he goes to the Dolphins. Number 3 is center Garrett Bradbury out of North Carolina State. Predicts the Chiefs, Giants, and Rams are the most likely teams to go after him. I think he goes to the Giants. Offensive tackle, number 4, Cody Ford out of Oklahoma. I think the Browns, Giants, and Texans are most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Texans. Number 5 is Andre Dillard, offensive tackle out of Washington State. I think the Browns, Chargers, and Giants are the most likely teams to grab him. I think he goes to the Giants. So it's really going to come down to center Garrett Bradbury or Andre Dillard for the Giants. With tight ends, T.J. Hawkinson. I think that the Broncos, Jaguars, and Raiders are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he does go to the Jaguars. Number 2 is Jay Sternberger I think that the Jaguars, Patriots, Seahawks are most likely teams to go after him. I think he goes to the Patriots. Number 3 is Noah Fant out of Iowa. I think the Jaguars, Patriots, Seahawks are most likely teams to go after him. I think he gets drafted by the Seahawks. Number 4 is Irv Smith Jr. out of Alabama. I think that the Broncos, Patriots, and Raiders are the most likely teams to grab him. I think the Patriots grab him. I think Patriots are either going to draft Jace Sternberger or Irv Smith Jr. Number 5 is Khalil Waring out of San Diego State. I think that the Raiders, Seahawks, and Texans are going to go after this guy. I think the Raiders end up drafting him. With wide receivers, number 1, Andy Isabella out of Massachusetts. I think that the Patriots, Cardinals, and Colts are most likely teams to draft this player. I think he goes to the Patriots. Number 2 is Marquise Brown out of Oklahoma. I think that the 49ers, Packers, and Steelers are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Steelers, and it's interesting with it because Antonio Brown goes to the Raiders, bringing his cousin Marquise, and you're back in business with Steeler Town. Number 3 on this list is A.J. Brown out of Mississippi. I think the Broncos, 49ers, and Giants are the most likely teams to go after him. I think he goes to the 49ers. Number 4 is N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State. I think the Broncos, Cardinals, and Redskins are the most likely teams to draft this player. I think he goes to the Redskins. Number 5 is DK Metcalf out of Mississippi. I think the Broncos, Giants, and Texans are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Broncos to replace Demaryius Thomas. With halfbacks, you got number 1, David Montgomery out of Iowa State. I think the Bears, Colts, and Dolphins are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Bears to replace Jordan Howard. Number 2 is Miles Sanders out of Penn State. I think the Bears, Colts, and Raiders are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Colts. Justice Hill, number 3 out of Oklahoma State. I think that the Bears, Chiefs, and Colts are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Chiefs. Number 4 is Damian Harris. I think the Buccaneers, Chiefs, and Dolphins are most likely teams to go after him. I think he gets drafted by the Buccaneers. And number 5 on this list, Joshua Jacobs out of Alabama. I think the Buccaneers, Chiefs, and Raiders are most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes actually to the Raiders with one of their 3 out of first-round picks. With quarterbacks, we got number 1, Dwayne Haskins out of Ohio. I think that the Dolphins, Giants, and Redskins are the most likely teams to draft him. I predict he goes to the Giants. Number 2 is Kyler Murray out of Oklahoma. I think the Cardinals, Dolphins, and Redskins are most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Cardinals. Number 3 is Ryan Finley out of North Carolina State. I think the Dolphins, Giants, and Redskins are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Dolphins to replace Tannehill. Number 4 is Drew Lock out of Missouri. I think the Broncos, Giants, and Dolphins are the most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Giants. So really for the Giants, it's either going to be Dwayne Haskins or Drew Lock in the first round. And then number 5 is Daniel Jones out of Duke. I think the Broncos, Dolphins, and Redskins are most likely teams to draft him. I think he goes to the Redskins. I don't think he's going to start. I think actually Alex Smith will be able to be ready to go at some point next year. And so he can sit behind Alex Smith until he retires, then he'll step in. Thank you for listening to the top 5 players coming into this 2019 NFL Draft based on positions from quarterback, halfback, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, secondary. It's very interesting that we have a very talented draft class where several guys could be spilling out into the second round. It's going to be a very exciting draft, and we're excited to see what unfolds. Thank you.